Level 1. The Student. You are 17 years old, standing at a chain-link fence at a small regional airport, watching a tiny Robinson R-22 hover about 3 feet off the ground. It barely looks like it's flying. It looks like it's arguing with gravity. And something in your chest decides right then that you need to be the one inside that machine. The dream is real. The price is also real. A full professional helicopter pilot training program costs around $97,000. That number sits in your stomach like a rock. Fixed-wing pilots can get away with less. Helicopter training is one of the most expensive paths in all of aviation, and nobody tells you this at the fence. You find out when you walk into the flight school and ask for a brochure. You take out loans, or you convince your parents, or you work 2 jobs and save for 3 years. However you get there, the day finally comes when you sit inside a Robinson R-22 for the first time, and your instructor shows you the 3 main controls. The cyclic stick between your knees, which tilts the rotor disc and moves you forward, backward, left, right. The collective lever at your left side, which changes the pitch of all the rotor blades at once and controls altitude. And the 2 pedals at your feet, which control the tail rotor and keep you from spinning like a top. Simple. Except it isn't, because a helicopter does not want to stay still. A helicopter is a machine that is perpetually trying to destroy itself, and the only thing keeping it stable is constant, subtle, never-ending corrections from the pilot. Move the cyclic, and you change altitude. Change altitude, and you affect the torque. Change the torque, and the nose wants to swing. Correct the nose swing, and the altitude drifts. It is a chain reaction of consequences that never stops, and in the beginning, your brain cannot process it fast enough. Your first hover lasts about 4 seconds before the helicopter starts drifting sideways, and your instructor takes the controls back with a calm that is somehow more embarrassing than if he had yelled at you. He doesn't yell, he just says, again. You try again. You drift again. He takes the controls again. This repeats for 40 minutes. By the time you land, your forearms are shaking from tension you didn't even know you were carrying. You are exhausted in a way that sitting in a chair shouldn't make you. You come back the next day, and the day after that. Slowly, something starts clicking. The corrections get smaller. The hovering gets steadier. One morning, you realize you've been hovering for 30 seconds without the instructor touching anything. It feels like witchcraft. Then they introduce auto-rotations. This is the helicopter equivalent of practicing what to do when the engine dies, because in a helicopter, unlike an airplane, you cannot simply glide down. If the engine fails and you do nothing, the rotor blades slow down, the lift disappears, and you fall. Fast. What you have to do is immediately lower the collective pitch, which unloads the blades and lets air flow upward through them, keeping them spinning on their own. The helicopter is now descending like a maple seed in a hurricane, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 feet per minute. Your job is to control that descent, flare at the right moment to bleed off speed, and land safely without engine power. Your instructor demonstrates it first. The throttle goes to idle, the engine noise drops, the helicopter starts falling, and from 2 seconds of controlled panic to a smooth touchdown, the whole thing takes less than 30 seconds. You stare at the altimeter the entire way down. He's completely calm. Now it's your turn. Every single time, for weeks, it feels like you're about to die. It never fully stops feeling that way. But you get better. You develop the timing, the muscle memory, the trust that the physics actually work. By the end of your training program, you have 200 hours of flight time, a commercial pilot certificate, an instrument rating, and a flight instructor certificate. You spent nearly $100,000. You are ready to fly. Except no one will hire you. Level 2, the flight instructor. Here's the dirty secret of helicopter aviation that nobody fully warns you about. When you finish flight school with 200 hours, you are technically qualified to fly commercially. But almost every real job in the industry requires at minimum 1,000 hours. Some require 1,500. You have 200. That gap has to be filled somehow, and the industry has figured out a very elegant solution where the gap gets filled by you teaching other people to hover while getting paid barely enough to cover your loan payments. Welcome to being a flight instructor. This is where almost every professional helicopter pilot begins their career, without exception. You are now on the other side of that R-22. You are the calm one who takes the controls back without yelling. Except inside, you're not calm. Inside, you are watching a student drift toward a taxiway at 10 feet off the ground while holding your coffee and trying to look like this happens every day. Because it does. It happens every day. The pay is roughly $30,000 to $40,000 a year, if you're lucky. Some schools pay you by the flight hour, not a salary, which means on rainy days when no one flies, you make nothing. You have a $100,000 education and you are eating gas station sandwiches in a flight school break room watching weather apps like they're the stock market. But here's what's actually happening. You are flying. A lot. Not exciting flying. Repetitive, methodical, hovering in a parking lot flying. Auto rotations for the 17th time this week. Hovering autos, steep approaches, confined area operations, the same maneuvers over and over from the right seat while someone on your left struggles with something you struggled with 2 years ago. It's tedious, and it is building your hours faster than almost anything else. 12 months in, you have 600 hours. 18 months in, you braid 1,000. The world changes. Level 3. The Tour Pilot. You apply for a job flying scenic helicopter tours. Grand Canyon, Hawaii, Las Vegas at sunset. The interview is quick. They care about your hours, your record, and whether you can keep a smile on your face while a tourist grabs the door handle when you bank into a turn. You get hired. The helicopter is a Bell 206 Jet Ranger or an Airbus H-130. Turbine engine, real money. The machine costs more than a house, and for the first time in your career, you are trusted with something that isn't a piston-powered trainer the size of a bumper car. The job sounds glamorous, and parts of it are. You fly over the Sonoran Desert at golden hour and the light does something to the canyon walls that no photograph ever captures. You hover at the edge of a waterfall in Kauai and the mist comes up around the skids. You genuinely feel in those moments like the luckiest person alive. Then a tourist asks you for the 4th time if the helicopter can just stop and hover for a second so they can take a picture. You are hovering. You have been hovering. You have been hovering in this exact spot for 30 seconds while they figure out their phone camera. You smile. You say, "Of course." The route never changes. You fly the same 15-minute loop, sometimes 8 times a day, narrating the same landmarks in the same order with the same inflection, while passengers ask you the same questions. How fast does it go? How high are we? What would happen if the engine stopped? That last one you explain very calmly is actually a non-issue. They look skeptical. You explain auto rotations. They look more skeptical. The pay is better than instructing. Not great, but better. Somewhere between $45,000 and $60,000 a year. You are building turbine time now, which is the currency of the next level of your career. Every flight, even the repetitive ones, is hours in a turbine helicopter, and those hours are what open the doors that actually pay real money. You are also learning something that flight school never fully teaches you. Passenger management. How to be the calmest person in the aircraft, even when something goes wrong. How to talk to people who are terrified without making them more terrified. How to fly with precision while simultaneously being a tour guide, a reassuring presence, and a professional. These soft skills will matter more than you expect. After a year or two, you have 1,500 hours, most of them turbine. You're ready for something bigger. Level 4. The EMS pilot, Emergency Medical Services, Air Ambulance. This is when your job stops being about scenery and starts being about whether someone lives or dies. You are based at a hospital or a standalone EMS base somewhere. Your helicopter is a twin-engine machine, most likely an Airbus H-145 or Leonardo AW-119. It costs around $6 million. There is a medical crew with you, a flight nurse and a paramedic. They are your team. When the tones go off, the 3 of you move. The tones can go off at any time, 2 in the afternoon, 3 in the morning, Christmas, your daughter's birthday. The nature of EMS aviation is that need doesn't schedule itself. You are on call for shifts that run 12 hours or 24 hours, depending on your base and your contract. You sleep at the base, you eat at the base. When the phone rings, you go. A typical scene flight works like this. Dispatch gives you a location and a situation. Car accident on a rural highway 40 miles out. You plot the route while your crew preps the aircraft. You file a flight plan mentally or formally depending on conditions. You brief the crew on weather, obstacles, intended landing zone. Then you fly. When you arrive at a scene, you do not land in a parking lot. You find the best available flat surface within carrying distance of the patient. Sometimes it's a highway median. Sometimes it's a farm field at night with nothing but a flashlight showing you where the ground is. You are flying an approach in the dark to a spot you've never seen before with a $6 million aircraft while your crew is already preparing to sprint to a person who may not have much time left. Night flying in EMS is genuinely one of the most demanding things in civilian aviation. You wear night vision goggles, which show you the world in green-tinged detail, but strip away depth perception and eliminate your ability to see weather until you're in it. The wire strikes, the power lines crossing the field you almost landed in, the tower with no lights that someone forgot to report to aviation authorities. These are not hypotheticals. Pilots in EMS carry a catalog of near misses that they discuss in training because the industry has learned the hard way from each one. The salary is around $70,000 to $90,000 a year. The weight of the job is harder to measure. You have a good night where you pick up a stroke patient who would have died waiting for a ground ambulance, and they live, and 3 months later you get a Christmas card from their family. You have a bad night where you arrive and the crew works on a child for the entire flight, and the ER team is waiting on the roof, and despite everything, it doesn't work. You don't talk about the bad nights much, but you carry them. Your instrument rating is getting a serious workout here. Weather that would ground most pilots is weather you make decisions about with real consequences on the other side of the wrong call. You become, of necessity, a better pilot, not because you're braver, because you're more thorough, more careful, more precise. Every pre-flight becomes sacred. Every checklist becomes non-negotiable. You build 2,000 hours, then 2,500. Level 5, the offshore pilot. Aberdeen, Scotland is home to the busiest helicopter terminal on Earth. More than 100 helicopters take off from there every single day, hauling workers out to the oil and gas platforms of the North Sea. The platforms are up to 200 miles offshore. The weather is described by veteran pilots as 95% boredom and 5% sheer terror, and anyone who flies there will tell you both parts are accurate. You wake up at 5 in the morning. This is not optional. Your day starts hours before departure with weather briefings, fuel calculations, passenger manifests. Your aircraft is a Sikorsky S-92 or an Airbus H-175. A large, twin-engine machine designed specifically for this environment. You and your co-pilot put on your immersion suits and life jackets before you walk out to the aircraft, because if this thing goes into the North Sea, you have minutes before hypothermia makes decisions for you. The flight out takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2.5 hours, depending on how far the platform is. During cruise, the autopilot flies and you monitor. Systems, fuel, navigation, air traffic control, offshore agency frequencies, passenger weight. You are never not doing something, but none of it looks dramatic from the outside. Arriving at a platform is not like landing in an airport. There is no runway. There is a helideck, which is a steel platform about the size of a large living room bolted to the top of a structure that is itself moving in a sea that doesn't care about your approach angle. You call 10 minutes out. The deck gets cleared. You get the green light from the production foreman. Then you bring a helicopter weighing several tons onto that platform in crosswinds that can gust past 30 knots, with fog rolling in behind you. One pilot described the North Sea weather this way. You can land on a perfectly clear day, walk inside the platform for lunch, come out 40 minutes later, and not be able to see well enough to take off. The sea fog doesn't announce itself, it just appears, and you wait, sometimes for an hour, sometimes for 4. There is a cafeteria. The food is usually good. On a really bad weather day, you sit. You drink coffee. You check the weather every 30 minutes. You go back to the cafeteria. This is the boredom. You are 200 miles from shore in a machine that can't take off, eating institutional food on a steel island in the middle of the most inhospitable body of water in Europe. It is, objectively, fine, but it is also not what you imagined when you watched that R-22 hover at 17. The pay makes the immersion suit worth it. Offshore helicopter pilots earn between $75,000 and $200,000 a year, with the upper range going to experienced captains on the North Sea and Gulf of Mexico routes. The schedule is typically 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. You are either completely at work or completely at home, with nothing in between. Your family builds a rhythm around your rotation. When you are home, you are genuinely home. When you are gone, you are genuinely gone. You accumulate 3,000 hours, then 4,000. Your name goes on the short lists for the jobs that most helicopter pilots never see from the inside. Level 6, the Military Combat Pilot. Not everyone takes the civilian route. Some of you are 22 years old and sitting in an Army recruiter's office, and the path to your wings goes straight through a uniform. Army helicopter pilots are almost all warrant officers, a unique rank that exists specifically to create technical experts rather than administrators. You don't need a 4-year degree. You need a high school diploma, a score of at least 40 on the SIFT test, good vision, and the willingness to sign a 10-year service obligation the day you earn your wings. Basic combat training first, then warrant officer candidate school, then Fort Noversell, Alabama, which used to be called Fort Rucker, which helicopter pilots still call the Mother Rucker because of what it does to you. Flight school lasts about a year. They teach you to fly, then they teach you to fly at night. Then they teach you to fly at night with goggles in terrain that is actively trying to kill you at altitudes so low that the trees are a hazard and the pylons are a daily concern. After initial flight training, you specialize. You might go to the AH-64 Apache, a 2-seat attack helicopter that is, by any reasonable definition, a flying weapons platform. It costs $35 million. It carries rockets, missiles, and a 30mm cannon that fires at 600 rounds per minute. Your job is to provide close air support to ground troops, which means you fly into places where people are actively shooting back at you, and you deal with that. Or you go to the UH-60 Blackhawk, the workhorse. Transport missions, medevac, air assault, special operations support. You fly 15 Rangers onto a target in the dark and get out before anyone figures out what happened. You pick up a wounded soldier under fire from a landing zone that a fixed-wing aircraft could never reach. The Blackhawk pilots have a saying, "We fly where planes cannot, and we stay when planes would leave." Or you go to the CH-47 Chinook, the tandem rotor heavy lifter. It can carry an artillery piece slung underneath it. It can carry a truck. It once carried 3 vehicles and 46 soldiers in a single sortie in Afghanistan. The Chinook pilots are, with affection, known as the truck drivers of the sky. They don't mind. Combat flying adds a dimension to your skill that civilian aviation can only approximate. Night vision goggle operations in hostile territory, nap of the earth flying, which means low, fast, and using terrain features to avoid radar and ground fire. Brownout landings in the dust of the Middle East, where visibility goes to 0 in the final seconds before touchdown, and you land by feel and instrument. After a deployment, you have seen things that most civilian pilots will never see, and you have skills that cannot be fully taught in peacetime. After your service commitment, the civilian industry will pay very serious attention to your resume. Level 7, the Search and Rescue Pilot. The mission brief is simple. Someone is in the water, or on a mountain, or in a forest after a small plane went down and air traffic control lost contact 40 minutes ago. Your job is to go find them and bring them back, and the window for that to be a live recovery, rather than a recovery of a different kind, is getting smaller while you read this. SAR pilots fly for the Coast Guard, for military branches, for civilian rescue organizations, for national park services. The equipment varies. The stakes don't. You operate in weather that grounded every other aircraft because the person who needs you doesn't get to wait for conditions to improve. The helicopter hoist is your signature tool. You hover 50 feet above water while a rescue swimmer is lowered on a cable. The wind is moving the aircraft. The wave action is moving the swimmer. The cable is swinging. You cannot see what's directly below you, so you fly on instruments and radio guidance from the crew chief who is leaning out the door watching everything. The rescue swimmer reaches the survivor. They get into the rescue basket. You feel the weight change through the controls. You recover the cable, turn around, and fly to the hospital. Some days the basket comes up empty. The survivor didn't make it before you arrived. You fly back anyway. You debrief anyway. You come back tomorrow. SAR pilots develop an almost supernatural ability to read weather, sea state, and terrain. They learn to make decisions with incomplete information under time pressure, which is a skill that sounds simple and is anything but. The salary is in the range of $60,000 to $90,000 for civilian SAR, with government positions following federal pay scales. The work is not about the money. Everyone in SAR knows that. They do it because they are the reason some people are still alive.
Level 8. The Aerial Firefighting Pilot. California is burning. Again. The smoke is visible from space. You are in a Sikorsky S-64 Sky Crane, also called the Helitanker, which is the largest purpose-built civilian helicopter in the world. It weighs 40,000 pounds at maximum takeoff weight. It has a snorkel that drops into a lake, river, or reservoir and fills a 2,000-gallon water tank in 45 seconds. Then you fly to the fire. Aerial firefighting is considered by many professionals to be the pinnacle of civilian helicopter aviation. It requires more experience than almost any other role. The environments are extreme. Heat rising from an active fire creates turbulence that can throw a helicopter violently. The smoke reduces visibility in seconds. The terrain in most wildfires is mountainous, which means confined area operations in the worst possible conditions. You are dropping water or fire retardant on specific targets while coordinating with ground crews and fixed-wing tankers, and a fire boss who is orchestrating the entire air operation on radio. The decisions are fast, and they are final. A misjudged approach in a smoke-filled canyon has no good outcomes. Pilots in aerial firefighting operate at the edge of the certified flight envelope on a regular basis, not because they are reckless, but because the fire is there, and the winds are doing what fires do to winds, and you still have to make the drop. The salary ranges from $80,000 for base positions up to over $175,000 during peak seasons with overtime. Some pilots earn more in 4 months or fire season than in an entire year elsewhere. The season runs roughly from May through October in the American West and longer in Australia and Southern Europe. During that window, you live in base camps. You fly when called. You eat, sleep, and wait for the radio. Then you fly again. Veterans describe the work as addictive. The intensity of the environment, the clarity of the purpose, the absolute demand for skill. There is no routine in firefighting aviation. Every day is different. Every fire is different. The terrain changes, the wind changes, the fire itself changes while you're working it. You are improvising at the highest level of your ability with real consequences every single time.
Level 9. The VIP and Corporate Pilot. The world contains a number of people who have made enough money that commercial aviation seems beneath them. You call them. Your helicopter might be an Airbus H-160 or a Sikorsky S-76. The interior has leather seats and a soundproofing system that makes it quieter inside than most cars. You pick up a CEO from the roof of a Manhattan skyscraper and land at a private terminal at Teterboro Airport in New Jersey where a Gulfstream is waiting. The entire transfer takes 11 minutes. Without you, it would have taken 75 in traffic. Your passengers include hedge fund managers, tech billionaires, foreign heads of state, celebrities. You know this because you have been thoroughly background checked, you have signed a non-disclosure agreement, and you have been told, very clearly, that whatever you hear in the cabin stays in the cabin. You will hear things in the cabin. You will not repeat them. The expectations are different here. Punctuality is not a virtue, it is a baseline. If you are 2 minutes late, there is a conversation. If weather forces a delay, you have already called ahead to arrange the ground alternative before the passenger even asks. Every pre-flight is immaculate. Every approach is smooth. The aircraft is always clean, always fueled, always ready. You are not just a pilot, you are part of a service. The pay reflects this.
Corporate helicopter pilots earn between $100,000 and $150,000 or more annually. Benefits are generous. The schedule can be unpredictable because wealthy people don't always know on Monday what they'll want on Wednesday, but when you're not flying, you're genuinely not working. There is a stillness to corporate aviation that rescue and firefighting and offshore pilots sometimes envy and sometimes pity. You are excellent at what you do. There is no question of that. The skill required to land a $6 million helicopter on a rooftop in a crosswind is real skill. But nobody's life depends on whether you make the approach. It is a different kind of pressure. Some pilots love it. Some find, after a few years, that they miss the weight of the other kind.
Level 10, the chief pilot. You are not flying much anymore. You didn't plan for this. You planned to fly forever. But somewhere around 5,000 hours, someone in the organization asked if you wanted to transition into a management role, and the salary was meaningful, and you said yes. And now you are sitting in a glass-walled office looking at a whiteboard full of scheduling and regulatory compliance, and you miss the smell of jet fuel in a way that is almost physical. As chief pilot, you are responsible for everything that happens in the air without actually being in most of it. You set the standards. You oversee the training programs. When something goes wrong, it comes to you first. A near miss in a confined zone. A pilot who made a weather call that everyone is second-guessing in the debrief. An incident report that will go to the FAA or the CAA or whatever regulatory body oversees your operation. You wrote the manual that governs how every flight is conducted, and you are the one who gets called at 2 a.m. when someone deviates from it. You hire pilots, you evaluate them in check rides where one bad day can end a career or reveal a candidate who is quietly exceptional. You decide who gets the night flying assignments and who needs more simulator time before they're ready. You build the culture of safety in an organization that operates machines worth millions of dollars in environments that don't forgive mistakes. The authority is real, so is the loneliness of it. You are no longer one of the crew in the break room swapping stories. You are the one the stories are told to when something has to be reported. The distance between management and line pilots is not personal, it is structural. It exists for good reasons. You understand the reasons. You still feel the distance.
Your salary is now between $120,000 and $190,000. You have a pension, or the equivalent. You have spent 25 years becoming someone who could hold this position, and you hold it with the weight of everything you've seen. On quiet days, you still walk out to the ramp. You stand near the aircraft and watch the rotors turn during a pre-flight. You remember the R-22 hovering at that chain-link fence when you were 17. The gap between who you were then and who you are now is so large it barely seems like the same life. It is the same life. It was always the same life. Just rotating blades and the decision to go up, over and over again, until the sky became the place you understood better than the ground. Some evenings, if you're lucky, you still get to fly. Not for a mission, just to keep current. You climb out over the city at dusk, and for 30 minutes, nothing else exists. No incident reports, no scheduling conflicts, no FAA oversight. Just you, the controls, the wind, and several thousand feet of open air beneath the skids. You think, this is still the best job in the world. And then you land, walk back to the office, and deal with tomorrow's paperwork.